I never liked Easter much after what happened that year. Nobody in the family brings it up anymore, but I still see it when I close my eyes. Fragments like a broken reel. The oversized bunny head. A tiny hand being led away. The sudden flash of a black car turning the corner. Back then, we were still whole. My husband Daniel and I were trying to hold on to the magic of childhood for our two boys, Ben and Oliver. Ben had just turned 6. Oliver was 4, gentle and timid, always glued to my side as if letting go would make him vanish. Ben was our bold one, curious, full of questions, always the first to leap before thinking. It was spring of 2007. Daniel had found this family resort tucked in the Catskills called Pinewood Grove. The brochure was all glossy promises, hiking trails, horseback rides, bonfires, and a whole week of Easter-themed activities. It sounded like the perfect escape. The place looked like it had been frozen in the late 80s. Our cabin smelled faintly of mildew. The lodge had buffet-style meals beneath buzzing fluorescent lights, and the kids played in a big grassy field at the center. Families mostly from the city had come, trying to give their kids a break from screens. At first it worked. The boys dyed eggs in the crafts room, chased each other in the open fields, and roasted marshmallows with Daniel by the fire. Every afternoon there was a theme: egg painting Monday, bunny bingo Tuesday, and the Easter bunny showed up almost daily. The suit was a little sad-looking, its fur worn thin in places. Big fake blue eyes, a round pink nose, floppy oversized feet. He never spoke, just waved, gave high fives, and posed for photos. The resort claimed it was a local volunteer, someone who had done it for years. Oliver hated him from the start. The moment he spotted the bunny at breakfast that first day, he latched onto my legs and sobbed until his nose bled. I had to hold him in my lap while the bunny shuffled by, raising a gloved hand in an awkward wave. Ben thought he was hilarious. He high-fived him, laughed when he pretended to trip, and waved every time the suit appeared. The man inside seemed harmless enough, good at slapstick pantomime, like he'd practiced this for kids countless times. But then things started to feel wrong. Thursday, the 4th day. That morning was the big egg hunt. They set it up in the south field near the play center. I held Oliver's little plastic basket while Daniel went back to the lodge to grab us coffee. Ben tore off with a pack of older kids, scouring the bushes and tall grass. The Easter bunny was out there too, literally hopping at times, pretending to hide eggs and letting kids find them. At first, I thought it was sweet how much attention he gave Ben. He slipped him extra eggs, even pointed dramatically to one tucked behind a tree stump. Ben looked up at him with absolute trust, but after a while I realized he wasn't mingling with the other kids. He wasn't working the crowd. He was just following Ben. Always Ben. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being overprotective. Still, I nudged Oliver to the far edge of the field, closer to a cluster of toddlers bumbling around in the grass. He'd already had 2 meltdowns this week, and I wasn't risking another. Maybe 10 minutes passed. Maybe a little more. Then I glanced back across the field and my stomach dropped. No Ben. I scanned the patchwork of bodies. Dozens of kids darting between clumps of daffodils. Parents bent over cameras. The big white suit fluttering like a misplaced cloud. Camp counselors in green Pinewood Grove polos. But there was no red hoodie. Ben had been wearing that bright red hoodie all week, the one with the little white dinosaur on the back. It should have been a beacon. Ben? I called once, trying to keep my voice steady. The words sounded thin in the open air. A woman with short gray blonde hair touched my shoulder as if I were about to wobble. "Are you looking for a boy in a red sweatshirt?" she asked softly. Her voice smelled faintly of peppermint. Yes, Ben," I said, and the relief in my throat turned to ice when she pointed, without hurry, toward the dip behind the kids' center where the field sloped down toward the gravel parking lot. "I just saw him with," she hesitated, "with the bunny. They were walking that way." For a second I thought maybe Ben had wandered to help or get a closer look at a hidden egg. Then my heart went hot and hollow. I grabbed Oliver's plastic basket. It swung like a pendulum, and I ran. I don't remember how I managed to carry him and move so fast. Momentum swallowed the uneven ground under my shoes. I was blind to everything except the echo of my own footsteps and the drum of blood in my ears. I screamed his name until the sound broke. They were near the edge of the gravel lot, maybe 20 feet from a crooked black sedan. The bunny was holding my son's hand. Ben looked smaller than he should have, like the world had compressed around him. He turned when he heard me, and his face split into a grin. Innocent, proud, trusting. The sight should have felt ordinary. It did not. The man in the costume let go of Ben's hand as I slammed into them. "Ben!" I sobbed, gathering him to my chest. His red hoodie smelled like sunscreen and cut grass. "What are you doing? Why did you take him?" I spat the questions onto the man like stones. My voice cracked on each syllable. He lifted the floppy bunny head, and for the first time I heard him speak. Clear, guarded. "I was bringing him to his mom," he said, and for a crazy second his tone made sense, like he'd been doing a favor. It felt like the wrong reply at the wrong angle of a nightmare. "I am his mom," I shouted, more furious than I'd intended. I reached for the head, blind with fear, and when my fingers hit the faux fur, he shoved me hard. I went down on my side with Oliver in my arms. The wind left me. Ben screamed, "Sharp animal," and the man ran to the driver's side and floored it. Gravel sprayed into my face. Grit stuck to the tears on my cheeks. The black sedan fishtailed away and disappeared around the bend so fast the world tilted. I tried to get the plate. The license was smeared. Mud, oil, something darker. An impression instead of letters. Daniel arrived 10 minutes later, breathless and white-faced, having come from the lodge after I'd shouted for him. He had no idea what had happened. There was nothing to explain the sight of me clutching both boys, shaking, the boys small in my arms as if that made them safer. At the front desk, the words that should have been beside us fell away. No one had been assigned to be the Easter Bunny that morning. The regular volunteer had called in sick. The real costume had gone missing from the storage shed behind the kids' center. Staff admitted, with the mechanical politeness of people who are paid to soothe, that none of them stopped the man because they assumed he was with us, part of our family fun, or a private hire. Nobody had realized the suit was gone. There were no security cameras covering the lot. The ones in the lodge and dining hall were useless. The footage that did catch the car did not show the plate. Angle too poor, distance too great. We called the police. They took statements and inked the hours into forms that read like a different life. Ben didn't understand the gravity of it. He kept saying, as if that could hold the memory in place like a physical thing, "He was nice, Mom. He gave me an egg." He pressed the small foil-wrapped chocolate into my palm that night and smiled as if that explanation settled everything. That gesture, kindness measured in candy, felt like a knife in my ribs. The resort gave us a full refund and apologized profusely, offering free stays for life. We never went back. Not there, not to that part of the state. For months, Ben's dreams turned into a procession of costumed faces, Chuck E. Cheese, Santa, mascots at baseball games, any painted eyes that might hide someone behind them. He started therapy. He's 23 now. He's doing well. He will tell you he doesn't remember most of it, or that he doesn't like to talk about the scary parts. I accept that he has moved on and built walls that keep the shadows at bay. I did not move on as cleanly. I still dream the same clipped images. The oversized bunny head turning toward us, the lifeless blue eyes, the flash of a black car. I replay the moments in a loop. What if I'd been watching more closely, if Daniel had been there sooner, if I hadn't let Oliver cling to me like a barnacle all week? The guilt sits heavy, a small animal that claws at me in quiet hours, and the worst piece of the puzzle, the bit that wakes me in the small hours with cold teeth. That man could have done it again. Maybe he did. Maybe somewhere in another field or a parking lot in the dull light of some holiday. A costume hit a stranger's face and a child trusted. The idea that it could have been more than seconds away from being something terrible is the part I can't let go of. I was 15 the summer my dad took me camping for what would end up being our last Father's Day together. I didn't know it then, of course. At that age, I thought summers stretched on forever. Each one a repeat of the last. Endless chances to pitch our beat-up tent, burn marshmallows until they fell into the fire, and skip rocks across water so still it mirrored the sky. But life shifts without warning. Sometimes it's in the middle of a dumb laugh, like when Dad joked that bear spray worked better than deodorant. I didn't realize then how fragile those moments were. My name's Mira. I grew up just outside Asheville, North Carolina. Dad Dev Malik wasn't just a mechanic. He was a man who loved cars the way some people loved pets. Mustangs, Impalas, even our dull old Tacoma. He talked to them, coaxed them like friends. His hands were always marked with grease that never washed out. His clothes carried the faint tang of gasoline and pine sap. But his hugs, God, they could crush the air out of you in the best way. Mom died when I was 7. After that, it was just me and Dad, and he made every Father's Day feel like it was ours, not his. He'd always say, "I only get to be a dad because I've got you, kiddo." I'd groan and roll my eyes, but secretly I loved it. That year, he chose Pisgah National Forest. A 2-hour drive. Secluded, he said. Better fishing. Fewer crowds. I wanted Lake Julian again, but I didn't fight him. We pulled in late afternoon. Trees so tall they swallowed the sky closed around us. A creek whispered nearby, water rushing over rocks, and birds called like neighbors gossiping across fences. The firewood was damp from recent rain, but Dad had packed dry kindling in the truck bed. "Nature's moody," he grinned. We set up camp, unrolled our bags, and I pretended to care only about s'mores and scary stories. But deep down, I was just happy it was the two of us. No homework, no buzzing phone, no constant reminders that the world could fall apart without asking permission. Only someone else was out there. About 150 feet away, through a slit in the trees, another campsite sat with a cheap dome tent. 2 men. They'd strung beer cans on a rope and lounged like they had nowhere better to be. At first it seemed normal. People share space in the woods. But something about them sat wrong. They didn't hike. They didn't fish. They didn't even wander. Just drank. One of them coughed, a wet hacking sound that went on too long. The other wore sunglasses even after the sun sank. Every time I laughed too loud or said something, I felt it. Eyes sharp as glass, cutting across the dark. Dad noticed too. He whistled, poked at the fire, even pulled out his harmonica. But the lines around his mouth hardened with each burst of laughter from the other camp. His hand stayed fixed on the cooler handle, knuckles white. Just before sunset, he leaned close, voice low. "Mira, help me pack." I blinked. "What?" "But we just got here." "No arguments," he said, not unkind, but firm. "We're moving. Closer to the access road. Don't like the feel of this, that was it." We shoved the tent into the truck, half collapsed, gear rattling. Dad kept glancing over his shoulder, body tight as a wound spring. The new spot was less charming, just a clearing near a gravel road where the occasional car whispered by. I sulked, wishing we'd stayed by the creek, but I didn't say it. We ate noodles out of paper bowls by lantern light. Marshmallows blackened on sticks. Dad still cracked jokes, reminded me of the time I poured orange soda into his engine instead of oil. But his eyes never softened. He kept watching the tree line. Then, somewhere between laughter and the end of a ghost story, he froze. Mid-word, his gaze locked past the firelight. I turned, heart in my throat, but the woods looked the same. Silent. Then I heard it. Leaves crunching. Slow, deliberate. 2 sets of footsteps, close, too close. "Mira," Dad whispered, voice strained tighter than I'd ever heard. "Under the truck now!" "What? Why?" "No time, go, quiet." Something in the way he said it cut through me. I didn't argue. I dropped low, heart hammering. I crept to the truck, sliding beneath it until gravel pressed into my back and the undercarriage framed my view. My chest rose and fell too fast, so I forced myself to hold my breath. Then I saw them, 2 pairs of boots stepping into the glow of our fire. The men from the other camp. One swayed slightly with a beer in his hand. The other swept a flashlight in slow arcs, its beam cutting across the dark until it landed briefly on the truck. "Evenin'," one called, his tone too casual. "Nice spot." Dad rose from his chair, slow and steady, the fire poker clenched in his fist like it belonged there. "Evening," he answered, voice level. "Need something?" The one with the beer smirked. "Nah, thought we'd join ya. Gets a little quiet over there." Dad gave a tight smile, but his eyes didn't soften. "She's fishing," he said easily, nodding toward the creek. "Should be back soon." That made them hesitate. The smirk faltered. "Fishing, huh?" One muttered, tilting his head. "That right?" The flashlight beam shifted as the second man broke away, wandering toward the truck. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would rattle the metal above me. The light swept across the tires, the windows creeping closer to where I lay. He was only a few feet away. I could smell him, sour beer and stale sweat. Then he stopped, fumbled with his zipper. Relief hit me sharp and nauseating when I realized he wasn't checking the truck. He was pissing in the bushes right next to me. I gagged silently, clamping a hand over my mouth as he whistled off-key, the stream hitting the dirt not 2 feet from my head. When he finished, he zipped up and ambled back toward the fire. The men lingered a moment longer. One gave a thin, crooked smile. "Well, guess we'll let you be." Dad said nothing. He just stood there, poker raised loosely at his side, eyes fixed and unblinking. The instant their shapes dissolved back into the tree line, Dad moved. Fast. He tossed everything into the truck bed except the tent, which he left standing like a decoy. My muscles screamed as I rolled out from under and scrambled inside the cab. The door shut with a solid thud and we drove in silence, gravel popping under the tires. We didn't speak until we reached the ranger station. Only then did Dad exhale and call the sheriff's department. His instincts had been right. Rangers later spotted the men's car parked in the shadows near the access road, engine warm, headlights off. They hadn't expected Dad to bypass home and drive straight to the nearest substation. When deputies pulled them over, the men claimed they were just driving around, but a check showed one had a warrant for trespassing. The other had a knife tucked in his sock. The officer turned to Dad. "These the same men?" Dad's voice was calm, deliberate, edged with steel. "You're lucky I brought my daughter here instead of leaving you both in a hole no one would ever find." The men were arrested. The charges, trespassing, a minor weapons violation, didn't stick long. That wasn't the point. The point was Dad saw danger when I only saw campfire shadows, and he acted. He saved me. The next summer, Father's Day felt different. Dad had a stroke. He lived, but not the same. No more hikes, no more long drives. We celebrated with takeout and photo albums instead of fishing poles and campfires. But that night in the forest never left me. The way the firelight flickered on his face, the quiet fury in his stance, the poker glinting like it was forged for that single purpose, to protect me. Now, every Father's Day, while the world fills the internet with brunch spreads, pressed shirts and sentimental captions, I don't post a thing. I sit under the old pine tree in our backyard with his harmonica in my hands. Sometimes I play, sometimes I just hold it, and sometimes I cry. But always I remember. To every parent, listen to your instincts. They're sharper than you think. And to every daughter, know what it looks like when someone would walk through fire for you. Because I do. I always used to think Father's Day was just another Hallmark gimmick. Ties, socks, cheap cologne. But for me, it was never just that. It was sacred. Growing up in the countryside near Sheffield, it had always been just Dad and me. No siblings, no mom. She died giving birth to me and Dad never remarried. Our little brick house always smelled faintly of burnt toast and old records. Every spring he'd prune the roses out front like it was a ritual only he understood. Dad, Peter Holloway, was a quiet man. Not cold, just understated. He worked as a school librarian, lived between bookshelves even at home, and never once lost his temper with me. He taught me chess, how to patch a leaky sink, how to look someone in the eye and say please, even when you're furious. He started forgetting little things at 62. Keys in the fridge, mismatched shoes, putting bread in the kettle, tea bags in the toaster. At first we laughed it off. Age quirks, we said, but then came the terrifying parts. Him wandering off and getting lost in the same neighborhood we'd walked 1,000 times. Panic setting in at Tesco because he didn't know how he got there. The diagnosis came soon after. Early onset dementia. Now he's 65, living at Oakmere House, a specialist care home on the outskirts of town. The place looks beautiful from the outside. Ivy crawling up red bricks, warm lighting, polite staff. But inside it's too quiet, too clean. It doesn't smell like home. This year I wanted something different for Father's Day. One last weekend together, just like it used to be. I told myself I could handle it. Saturday, 10:13 a.m. A light rain drizzled against my windshield as I pulled up outside Oakmere in my silver Vauxhall Corsa. The wipers beat a steady rhythm, but it didn't settle the gnawing tension in my chest. Megan, one of the senior carers, met me at the door, clipboard tucked against her chest. "Riley," she said softly, "you're sure you want to take him the full weekend?" "I've prepped everything," I told her quickly. Guest rooms made up. Stocked the fridge with his favorites. "He'll love it." She didn't smile, just hesitated. "He's changed a bit, especially at night, restless, talks to the window sometimes. Says he sees someone. My skin prickled.
Someone?
He just calls her the lady. Says she's waiting. A cold tremor crawled under my collar. That part of the disease? Most likely, Megan said, careful with her words. Still, it can be unsettling. If you feel overwhelmed, call us. We've got a night response team. I forced a laugh. I'll be fine. It's my dad. Saturday, 12:04 p.m. He looked older than I remembered, thinner, pale. But when his eyes found mine, they lit up. Riley, he whispered. My throat closed, nearly spilling tears. It had been weeks since he'd said my name. The drive back was quiet. He stared out the window as though the world had turned unfamiliar. Trees, shops, even traffic lights. It reminded me of being little, when he'd point out clouds shaped like animals. When we reached my flat, a modest third-floor place tucked in a quiet cul-de-sac, I helped him up the stairs. He was in good spirits. Toby, my dog, bounded over, tail thumping. Dad laughed, reaching down. That your dog? Yeah, you met him last year, remember? I don't remember much, he said, not sad. Just factual. I led him into the guest room, fresh sheets, a vase of lilies, and on the bedside table a framed photo from our holiday in Cornwall. He picked it up, studied it for a long time. Is this your brother? No, Dad, I said softly. That's you. Oh, that evening we had shepherd's pie. He remembered he liked it, even smiled as he ate. Afterward, we watched The Third Man together, the black and white glow flickering across his face. I kept sneaking glances at him. He looked comfortable, present but only halfway. Remember the holiday when we camped near the coast? I asked. He nodded, vague and slow. You were afraid of crabs. I was 7, I laughed. They looked like spiders. He studied me with soft, faraway eyes. You've grown up. I didn't think I'd get to see it. My throat tightened. You've always seen it, Dad. You were always there. Sunday, 2:13 a.m. Something pulled me awake. Not a sound exactly. More like a pressure, a shift in the air, the feeling you get right before a storm. I slipped out of bed and padded into the corridor. The flat was too still. No traffic outside, no TV hum, just the low buzz of the fridge. That's when I noticed the guest room door standing open. The bed was empty. Dad? My voice was barely above a whisper, as if I might wake the neighbors. I searched the lounge, the kitchen, the bathroom. Nothing. Then I saw it, the balcony door, slightly ajar. My chest seized. I ran barefoot, cold floor biting into my soles. Outside, Dad was by the railing, also barefoot, his back rigid. He was staring down at the dark, silent car park. One foot lifted, balanced on the edge. Dad! I shouted, sprinting toward him. He didn't turn. The lady's waiting, he whispered. I grabbed his arm, trembling. What lady? There's no one here. He finally turned his head. His eyes were wide, glassy, yet filled with something I couldn't pin down. Joy, terror, madness. You don't see her? His voice cracked with confusion. She's in the dress. She's always watching. There's no one there. Please come inside. It's freezing. He didn't resist, but he didn't help either. I wrapped an arm around him, slowly guided him back into the flat, settled him beneath a blanket. I sat beside him until his breathing evened and his eyes closed. I never slept again that night. Sunday, 9:48 a.m. In the morning, he was cheerful, almost glowing, asked for toast with marmalade. He didn't remember the balcony. Not a word. I wanted to tell him, but I didn't. Maybe I was protecting him. Maybe I was protecting myself. Sunday, 11:56 p.m. After dinner, we watched Casablanca. He hummed along softly to the soundtrack, eyes closed, swaying slightly. Then, without warning, he said, I used to dance to this with your mother. In the kitchen. You were in your cot. My chest tightened like a vice. I wish I remembered her. You've got her eyes, he murmured. When the film ended, I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, left the door open a crack. Monday, 4:02 a.m. The screaming tore me awake like a ripcord. Riley! Riley! I bolted down the hall. The guest room light was flickering, buzzing. Dad was on the floor, thrashing. She's here! She's here! I dropped to my knees. Dad, it's okay, you're safe. She's in the mirror. I saw her eyes. She wants me to jump. My blood ran cold. What did she say? His chest heaved. She said the world forgot me. That I'm just a burden. That you... He stopped, choking on the words. That you'd be better off. Tears burned my face. I grabbed him, pulled him close. You're not a burden. You're my father. His trembling eased. His breathing slowed. His fingers curled weakly around mine. You smell like Mom, he whispered. She had that lavender thing. Then his body went slack. Exhaustion pulled him under. Monday, 6:44 a.m. I'd called Oakmere after the incident. Megan arrived with a nurse named Sophie. He was calm again, distant, docile, like nothing had happened. As they led him to the lift, he turned back once. Riley? Yes, Dad? Tell the lady. I'm not ready yet. The doors slid shut. That was 6 months ago. I visit him every week. Sometimes he knows me. Sometimes he calls me nurse. Sometimes he doesn't speak at all. No one has ever explained who the lady was. Megan says it's just dementia, hallucinations stitched together by a failing brain, but I'm not sure. Since that weekend, strange things happen in my flat. Mirrors fog with words I didn't write. Once I found a single footprint on the balcony after a dry night. Lavender drifts through the hallway, though I don't own anything scented. And sometimes, just sometimes, I dream of a woman in a pale dress standing at the end of my bed, watching, waiting. I still celebrate Father's Day, but differently now. No cards, no cake. Just a visit, a conversation, even if I'm the only one speaking. And I never ever leave the balcony door unlocked. I told no one. Not the school counselor, not the bus driver who always nodded when I climbed on. Not even the quiet girl in homeroom who'd once passed me a tissue when I sneezed. I was 13 the first time I understood that other kids didn't live like I did. It happened in the smallest, most ordinary way. Olivia Price unzipped her lunchbox and lifted out a thermos of warm spaghetti, a juice box, and 2 cookies wrapped in neat plastic. She caught me looking and smiled. Want one? She asked. I shook my head but kept staring. That food looked clean, normal, not like at home. At home, nothing felt like it belonged to anyone. My name is Callie Brooke Pearson. I grew up in a sagging 2-bedroom house on the edge of Larchwood, South Dakota. You've probably never heard of it. People went there to disappear. My parents, Linda and Keith Pearson, weren't caricatures from books. No, they were quieter, more careful, good at smiling at the school office, at asking neighbors how their kids were doing while the house behind them smelled of old cigarettes and something rotten. We were 5 kids, me, Denny, who was 11, Kyle, who was 9, and the twins, Mara and June, barely 6. We weren't allowed in the front yard, and if we went to school, we came straight home. Mom didn't have a job. I'm raising the future, she'd say. Dad worked nights at a warehouse and came back mad, always. It started small. I remember the first time he shoved me inside the closet. I was 9 and had spilled orange juice on his sock. You're going to learn, he said, and pushed me through the door. I sat in the dark for nearly 9 hours. No light, no food, only mildew and the muffled sound of Mara crying outside. You okay, Cal? She whispered. I didn't answer. Answering felt like inviting worse. By 13, the punishments had escalated. Mom began to call me names, ugly little. She'd snap. And any time Dad looked at me like I owed him something, I stopped showering as much, started hiding under big shirts. I tried to become invisible. It didn't work. One winter morning, I woke to Dad at the foot of my mattress. I froze. His hand rested on my calf. You're growing up too fast, he breathed. I lay still and stared at the cracked plaster, pretending not to be there. The floorboard outside creaked. Mom, what the hell are you doing in here? She barked from the hallway. He pulled away as if checking there wasn't food hidden under a pillow, like that was the concern. We never had anything to sneak. The next day, Mom hauled me into the bathroom, slammed the door, and threw me against the mirror. You think you're some little seductress, huh? She spat, and the words hit like a slap. My head struck tile and the world tilted. Afterward, I sat on the cold tile, blood and broken glass around me, and taught myself the rhythm of silence. How to breathe between strikes and make the house believe I held nothing worth noticing. Blood, my blood. I tasted it at the corner of my mouth. Mom lit a cigarette, took one long drag, then pressed the cherry into the side of my thigh. The burn seared through me and I screamed. She smiled like she'd been waiting for it. I went to school the next morning with long sleeves, a limp, and silence. Always silence. Did you fall? Mr. DeWitt, the science teacher, asked, frowning at the way I moved. I nodded. He believed me. They all did. The attic was our punishment room. No light, no insulation, just wood and cold air, no sense of time. Denny once spent 3 days up there. When he came down, he didn't speak for a week. He still doesn't talk much. I kept a journal hidden under a loose floorboard. Not for escape, just so I could remember. The lies, the bruises, the moments they tried to erase by saying, "We love you," because they always said it afterward. That was their trick. I'm hard on you because I love you. If I didn't care, I wouldn't discipline you. You don't know how good you have it, but I knew better. And I started planning. At 15, I stole a paperclip from the school library, straightened it out, practiced on the bathroom lock for weeks. By then, Mom and Dad had started chaining the fridge shut. We got fed once a day, if that. Cold beans, uncooked rice, moldy bread. My body was bones and skin. Mara's ribs looked like piano keys. Then one night, Dad didn't come home. Arrested for stealing tools at work. Mom raged, drank half a bottle of something sharp, and passed out on the couch. That was my chance. I slipped the paperclip into the front door. 3 minutes. My hand shook, but I got it open. I ran straight to the twins' room, shook them awake. Then Denny, then Kyle. "We're leaving," I whispered. June started crying. I pressed my hand gently over her mouth. "Shh, just a walk. Trust me," Denny nodded. He didn't need convincing. Neither did Kyle. We crept barefoot through the snow. No time for shoes. 3 miles to the gas station. I carried June half the way, my feet splitting open, leaving red trails in the snow. Denny kept looking back, expecting headlights. When the Shell station lights came into view, I nearly collapsed. I made it as far as the ice machine before my knees gave out. An old man came outside, jaw slack. "What in God's name?" "Call 911, I gasped. Then the world spun away. The cops came in less than 10 minutes. They wrapped us in scratchy blankets, asked questions, took pictures, so many pictures. At the hospital, they told us we were malnourished, covered in old bruises. Denny had a fractured wrist. Mara's back was scarred with cigarette burns. I had the mark on my thigh. I refused to explain. Mom was arrested 2 days later. Dad too, once they pieced everything together. They cried in court, said they were struggling, said they loved us. The judge didn't flinch. "Life without parole," she said. The room erupted in applause. I didn't clap. I just stared at the floor and thought, finally. Foster care was terrifying at first. Every door felt like a trap waiting to slam. But over time, we learned what safety sounded like. What love actually looked like. The first time someone made us pancakes, I cried. The second time I asked for seconds. I'm 19 now, studying social work. I want to help kids like me. The nightmares still come, but when I wake up, there's no rotten smell. No locked doors. No eyes watching from the dark. Just sunlight and silence, the good kind. I never thought a night at my best friend's house would end in blood. If I had known, I'd have made up an excuse, said I was sick, grounded, anything. But I didn't. I said yes without hesitation, the way you do when you trust someone completely, when you're too young to realize monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear familiar faces. My name is Riley Brooks. I was 16 when it happened. It started like 1,000 other sleepovers. Notes and texts slipped between desks during class, a quick call to my mom, and me stuffing a duffel bag with leggings, a charger, and too many snacks. My best friend was Leah Madsen. She lived on Elk Ridge Road, in a white 2-story colonial tucked at the end of a gravel driveway. The kind of house with a tire swing in the front yard and wood so thick behind it that sound seemed to vanish inside. Her family had always been kind to me. Her mom, Claire, was a nurse who worked days at the clinic. Her stepdad, Warren, worked HVAC jobs and always carried the smell of dust and oil. Then there was Caleb, her older brother. I'd only seen him a few times. Once at the grocery store, once in their kitchen, and once when he picked Leah up from school in his truck. There was something off about him. Not mean exactly, not loud, but empty. His eyes never matched his body, like he was standing in the room while his mind wandered somewhere darker. Leah never said much about him, just that he'd dropped out, gotten into trouble, moved away for a while, and had only recently come back. Mom says he's trying to do better, she'd once told me, but she'd said it with the tone of someone who didn't really believe her own words. It was a Friday in late October. The air smelled of burning leaves and darkness fell before 6. When Mom dropped me off, Claire was finishing dinner. Chicken, biscuits, green beans, and sweet tea. Warren waved from the garage, grease still on his hands. The whole house smelled faintly of cinnamon from a plug-in. Everything felt normal, except Leah. She kept checking her phone at dinner, her fingers picking at the hem of her hoodie. Claire tried to draw her into conversation about school, but Leah barely answered. I nudged her under the table and she gave me a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. Later, in her room while we set up a movie, I finally asked, "What's wrong?" She hesitated, then sighed. Caleb texted, "He's coming by tonight." My stomach nodded. I thought he didn't live here anymore. He doesn't, but he shows up when he wants something. Usually money from Mom, and she just gives it to him. Leah shook her head. Not anymore. Warren won't let her. Last time they argued, Caleb punched a hole in the wall. Mom swore that was it, but Caleb doesn't care. Her words hung between us heavy. I didn't push her. We put on The Ring and pretended to focus, though both of us were really just straining to hear any sound outside. It was almost 12:30 a.m. when it came, the low growl of tires crunching across gravel. Leah went rigid. "Maybe it's not him," I whispered. "It's him," she said flatly. The front door didn't knock. It opened, slammed. Then his voice rose through the floorboards. "I said I need the damn money, Warren." A lower, firmer reply followed. "I told you, no more handouts. Get a job. Get help." "I am helping myself, you bastard. You think I won't?" Leah shot to her feet, shaking. "I have to check." "No," I whispered, grabbing her arm. "Stay up here." But she slipped free before I could stop her. The hallway light snapped on. I crept after her, my chest tight, and peeked over the banister. Claire stood at the base of the stairs, arms spread like a shield. Warren loomed just behind her, his chest heaving. And there was Caleb. Hood pulled up, jeans dark and worn, face pale and glistening with sweat. His eyes were wild, unfocused, like he wasn't fully there at all. And then, it's like something snapped loose and I don't even know where it came from. He drew a shotgun from under his coat so fast the metal flashed in the hallway light. Claire screamed. Warren lunged forward like a man trying to stop a train. The first blast hit him in the chest with a sound so brutal it flattened the air, like thunder boxed inside the house. Warren folded and hit the hardwood with a sick final thud. Leah screamed something that didn't register as words. Claire dropped to her knees beside him, hands clawing at his shirt, tears and blood on her palms. "Warren, oh my God, please," she sobbed, voice breaking into a strangled prayer. The second blast cracked through like an answer to the prayer and threw Claire backward. She slammed onto the tile. The room filled with the ugly metallic smell of blood and the sharp chemical sting of gun smoke. "Mom!" Leah shrieked, stumbling halfway down the stairs, sliding a foot on the runner. Caleb looked up at us then, blood flecking one cheek, sweat making his hair cling to his temple, his expression gone to something I couldn't name. There was a calm to it that made me sick. "Leah," he said, voice flat and too small for what he'd done, "you need to shut up now." I didn't mean to speak. I heard myself voice a hiss. "Run!" Leah moved before she had to think. She turned and bolted. I grabbed her sleeve and yanked her back into her room, slammed the door, locked it, shoved a desk against it with both of us heaving. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. "What the hell is he doing?" I asked, whisper thin. "I don't know," Leah sobbed. "I didn't think—" Her sentence broke into a keening sound when the stairs creaked below. Thump, 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 heavy boots. The kind that don't hurry but mean to take their time. His voice carried up, low and mocking. "Leah, Leah, don't make me come find you." She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands and dialed. 911, the operator said, sharp and distant through the static of fear. "Please," Leah whispered. And then, in a voice that was half hysteria and half an attempt at facts, "My brother shot our parents. He's killing them." Footsteps pounded the hall. He slammed the butt of the shotgun into the wood until the lock splintered. "You calling the pigs?" he spat. "Open the goddamn door." The lock snarled and gave. We didn't wait to see what would happen next. I yanked Leah to the window. "Go," I said. Now it's the second floor, we'll jump. We shoved through the sash, stumbled onto the porch roof, and folded over, rolling to break the fall. Pain lit up my palms from the rough shingles. Behind us, glass shattered, an ugly punctuation to the scene, and we ran not toward the gravel drive where his truck sat like a predator, but into the woods. Leaves slapped our faces. Branches tore at my hoodie, and the cold October air cut into my lungs. A shotgun blast ripped past us too close, and the world narrowed to one word: move. We must have run half a mile, lungs burning, legs heavy, before the yellow porch light of Mr. Hollis's hunting shack blinked like a promise. He was inside, cleaning a rifle, and when he opened the door and saw us, faces streaked with blood and dirt, wild with terror, he didn't ask questions. He pulled us in and locked every door. The police came 15 minutes later, and it was already too late for Claire and Warren. They found Caleb walking back toward his truck, laughing low to himself, sleeves dark with blood. He didn't fight. He just let them cuff him like a man who had finished what he'd started. Leah spent months in protective custody. I sat in a courtroom and said my piece. He was sentenced to life without parole. But the sentence didn't seal the image away. I still see it when I close my eyes. Warren's body on the floor, Claire's hands, the way Leah's whole face changed after that night. Leah moved away, changed her name. I swore I'd never sleep over at someone's house again. Monsters, I learned, aren't the things under the bed. They live down the hall. They eat at your table. They call you family. And sometimes they bring a shotgun. It began with a knock. Not sharp, not pounding, just soft enough that most people would have dismissed it. But for Billy Reynolds, it was the first domino. He was 12 when the knocking started. Lying awake in his small bedroom off the kitchen, he'd hear it. First the groan of the hallway floorboards. Then a faint, deliberate tap of fingers against the wood. Then silence. Always silence. He never opened the door. His mother, Sharon, had made that clear. If you ever hear someone knocking and it's not me, you do not open that door. Do you understand, Billy? He nodded. He understood. Rules made sense to him in a way love never really did. By 16, he didn't need reminders. The rules were carved into him, deeper than blood, deeper than any name. The Reynolds family lived in a low-income neighborhood in Pine Hollow, a town clinging to life 3 hours from anything people would call a city. Within 5 miles, there were 5 liquor stores, 7 churches, and not much else. Twice a day, a train cut through the outskirts, its whistle slicing the quiet like a blade through thin fabric. Sharon worked nights at the gas station on Route 7. Billy's father, Don, had once loaded pallets in a warehouse before the layoff and the back injury, though no doctor ever confirmed it. Now he spent his days slumped in a recliner, staring at static-filled news, chain-smoking, and drowning himself in Milwaukee's best until sleep took him with a cigarette still burning near his thigh. Billy learned how to vanish, into school hallways, into the back row of classrooms, into corners of his own home. "Why don't you talk more?" his math teacher, Mrs. Langley, asked once. Billy had shrugged. Nothing to say. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was the part he could give. One Thursday evening, Sharon stirred spaghetti in a dented pot, sauce clinging too thickly to the sides. Billy sat at the small table, a textbook open in front of him, though he hadn't read a word. From the living room, the TV blared news of another school shooting. Then came Don stomping down the hallway in a white undershirt and sagging boxers. "Where the hell's the damn remote?" Sharon didn't look up. "Same place you left it." "You got a smart mouth," Don snapped, "for someone serving a slop again." Billy's stomach clenched. His father's voice was like the crack of a starter pistol. Once it went off, there was no stopping the race. Sharon turned, wooden spoon gripped like a weapon. "Then get off your lazy ass and make your own dinner." Don's face flushed. He stepped closer. "What did you just say to me?" Billy shut his textbook. He knew the script. He knew how it would end. When it was over, Sharon's lip was split and spaghetti lay spilled across the linoleum like a carcass. Don muttered as he stomped back to the living room, grabbing another beer. Billy helped his mother into the bathroom. She pressed toilet paper to her lip, eyes shining, not with tears but with the effort of holding them back. "He'll calm down," she whispered, as if that somehow erased it. Billy stayed silent. She stared into the mirror, voice low, almost talking to herself. He wasn't always like this. Billy met her eyes in the reflection. "Were you?" She didn't answer. Sharon had grown up in a trailer with 6 siblings and a mother who treated pain like faith. Her father, whoever he was, never showed up. At 14, Sharon had her first job. At 17, her first broken rib from a boyfriend named Rick. She learned early that when someone said, "I love you," and followed it with a punch, it meant you were supposed to try harder. Don had once been different too, quiet, almost charming. He'd played guitar in high school, scribbled bad poetry, but years of disappointment had hardened inside him like cement, heavy and unyielding. He blamed the world, the economy, his wife, his kid, anyone but himself. Billy had grown up watching the same cycle repeat itself over and over, like living inside a rerun where the script never changed, but the bruises were always fresh. The last real conversation he'd had with anyone was with his school counselor. "Do you feel safe at home, Billy?" she asked gently. He nodded, though it came a beat too late. "You hesitated," she pressed. "I was just thinking," he muttered. "What were you thinking about?" He stared at her, long and flat, the silence stretching until she shifted in her chair. Finally, he answered, "What it would take to make it stop." It was a Saturday morning when Billy decided he was done being the kid. He opened the fridge looking for orange juice, but found only half-warm cans of beer and a crusty bottle of ketchup. Don snored on the couch, mouth open, beer balanced precariously on his stomach. Sharon was outside, barefoot in the yard, smoking and staring at nothing in particular. Billy shut the fridge, slid open a drawer, and picked up the sharpest knife he could find. Not to use, just to feel. Cold steel, weighty, solid, something that could listen. By Tuesday, he had a plan. Simple. Final. That night, after Sharon's shift, the house erupted again, shouting, slamming, the familiar crash of objects turning into weapons. By morning, Billy faked a cough, called the school, and said he was too sick to come in. Nobody asked for details. Why would they? By 11, the house was silent. Billy had vacuumed the hallway, washed the dishes, taken out the trash as if preparing for company. Then he stepped into his parents' bedroom. Don lay there, shirtless, beer can resting on his chest like a medal. His face slack, unguarded. Billy watched him for a full minute. Then he pressed a pillow down over his father's face. Don flailed, grunted into the cotton, then stilled. Sharon came home 2 hours later, smelling of gasoline and exhaustion. She tossed her purse onto the counter. "Where's your dad?" Billy was already behind her, hammer gripped tight. "I don't know," he said and swung. The next day, they sat together at the kitchen table. Sharon and Don propped up like mannequins across from him. Their faces were frozen grotesquely. Don's twisted with rage, Sharon's with grief and terror. Billy had stitched their eyelids open with black thread, taped their mouths into shapes that resembled words. "You don't care about me," Billy said, staring at them both. "But now you'll listen." He tilted Don's head, forcing his jaw open like a puppet. "Billy," he growled in a rough imitation, "you've really disappointed me." Then he turned to Sharon, softening his tone. "He's still just a boy, Don. He needs help." Billy laughed, a sharp bark that echoed in the kitchen. "I needed help a long time ago." For 3 more days, he stayed in the house. No visitors, no phone calls. The landlord slipped a note under the door about overdue rent. Billy slid it back with a red crayon smiley face. He cooked meals, watched cartoons, spoke to his parents at dinner. They never shouted anymore. The house was finally quiet. On the 4th night, the knocking returned. Not frantic, not violent, just deliberate. 3 raps, then silence. Billy froze, blood draining from his face. The sound was the same as when he was 12, the same warning his mother had given. "Don't open the door if it isn't me." But Sharon was here now. Sort of. The knock came again, louder this time. Billy crept to the door and pressed his ear against the wood. "Billy," a voice whispered. "You did good." He stumbled back, chest tight. "Who are you?" No answer. Then soft as breath, "Let me in." Billy's hand hovered over the lock. He didn't turn it. "I'm proud of you," the voice coaxed, but he didn't move. By the time the cops arrived, the air in the house reeked of rust, rot, and stale beer. The neighbors had finally called, said they hadn't seen Don or Sharon in days. That something about the boy didn't sit right. Inside, officers found the bodies at the table, grotesquely arranged, dressed up for dinner. Sharon still had a fork driven into her throat. Don's face was bloated and purple, almost unrecognizable. Billy sat on his bedroom floor, smiling faintly. "I made them stop," he whispered as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. He was declared unfit for trial, diagnosed with psychotic breaks, dissociation, and severe trauma. They placed him in a juvenile psychiatric ward where he whispered to the walls. They finally listened now. But Billy never opened the door again. Not once, not even when the knocking came at night. And it always did. I was 15 the summer it happened. That strange age where you start convincing yourself you're grown just because your voice sounds different when you hear it back, or because your legs look longer stretched out in the sun. My name's Lena Morgan, and in July of 2002 I was spending 2 weeks away from my home in Maple Rock, Georgia, staying with my cousin Kay in the next town over. Kay and I were always close, more like sisters than cousins, and her parents, my Aunt June and Uncle Mark, were the kind who let you be as long as you didn't break anything expensive. That July, both of them were working long hours, so most days we had the house to ourselves. It was supposed to feel like freedom, and honestly, it did. We'd sleep until late morning, eat toaster waffles while watching trash TV reruns, then either sunbathe in the backyard or wander down to the park. It was that weird in-between stage of life, still painting our nails glittery pink, still doodling hearts in notebooks, but with thoughts already shifting toward something darker, sharper, more complicated. Nobody warns you that freedom can also mean no one's looking out for you. Nobody tells you how easy it is to vanish when there's no one paying attention. That day was sweltering, the kind of Georgia heat that sticks to your skin, heavy and slow, like breathing through honey. Kay and I had walked a few blocks to the gas station for sodas and gummy worms. We were laughing about something dumb, a boy from a local band she liked, the kind of crush she couldn't stop bringing up. My tank top clung damp to my back, and the 2 big flip-flops I'd borrowed slapped against the sidewalk with every step. There was a man leaning near the vending machines outside the store. At first glance, nothing about him stood out. Tan cargo shorts, navy t-shirt, a ball cap pulled low enough to shadow most of his face. He held a stack of flyers, one arm propped casually against the machine like he belonged there. "Bet he's trying to sell lawn care or something," Kay muttered, nudging me. We rolled our eyes and tried to walk past, but he stepped forward, smiling. "Hey there. Sorry to bug you girls," he said, holding out a flyer. "Just doing a little canvassing for a local charity drive. Mind taking one?" Kay reached out automatically, and so did I. It felt rude not to. "Thanks," I said, barely glancing at the paper. I don't even remember what it was about. Something with community cleanup printed across the top. He smiled wider. "You girls from around here?" Before I could answer, Kay shrugged. "No, she's just staying with me for a couple weeks." The man nodded like he was tucking that detail away. "That's nice. Not many folks care about family anymore." His eyes slid over to me. "You look like you'd be a good volunteer. We're meeting just down the block at the church rec hall. Won't take long. Juice boxes and pizza after." I gave a nervous laugh. "Maybe next time." "Suit yourself." His voice was light, but his eyes stayed on me a beat too long. We walked away quickly. I glanced back once. He was still standing there, face turned toward us, watching. That evening, the house felt emptier than usual. Aunt June had the night shift at the hospital. Uncle Mark was away on business. The air conditioning barely worked, so we'd cracked the windows just enough for the hum of cicadas to drift in. By 6:30, Kay was in the shower. I stayed in the living room, flipping idly through a fashion magazine, one leg curled under me on the couch. The doorbell rang. I thought maybe it was the neighbor girl. She sometimes dropped by to borrow things. Without thinking, I padded over and pulled the door open. It was him, the man from earlier. He smiled as if we were old friends. "Sorry, I think I dropped my phone outside earlier. Just retracing my steps. Mind if I check the yard?" Something in me tensed. My stomach tightened, every instinct screaming no. But I didn't want to be rude, didn't want to look paranoid. So I opened the door a little wider, gesturing. Sure, I guess." That's when he shoved me. The motion was brutal and sudden. His hand clamped around my throat as he slammed the door shut with the other. My scream broke in my chest, strangled before it could escape. He dragged me by the arm toward the kitchen, his grip bruising. I kicked, clawed, twisted, every muscle burning with panic, but he was stronger. Too strong, so much stronger than I ever imagined anyone could be. "I'll kill you if you make a sound," he hissed, yanking duct tape from a bag slung over his shoulder. And I believed him. Every fiber of me believed it. I don't remember how long the drive lasted. Minutes, hours? Time had no shape in that car. He shoved me into the trunk of his sedan after binding my hands with tape. The air in the trunk was thick, metallic, chemical, like bleach mixed with sweat and iron. My chest heaved as I tried to calm my racing heart. When he opened it again, we were somewhere I didn't recognize. A rundown apartment complex, the kind with flickering hallway lights, peeling paint, and windows that no one looked out of. He dragged me inside a ground floor unit. The carpet was stained, the air heavy and stale, carrying the tang of mildew. The bedroom had blackout curtains drawn tight. The closet was padlocked. He shoved me onto a sagging mattress on the floor, then shut the door and locked it. Then he changed. At first, he didn't speak much, just paced the small room, muttering under his breath, eyes flicking to me like I was some kind of animal he was studying. When he finally spoke, he held a knife. "I want you to remember this," he said, crouching beside me. "People forget pain. But a name, my name, that sticks." Tears ran silently down my face as he carved into the soft part of my forearm. Slow, deliberate, as if etching into the grain of a tree. Blood ran down to my elbow, warm and sticky. And when he finally leaned back, he smiled. "You're mine now," he whispered. He tied me to the bed with zip ties and a belt. Hours, maybe more, passed in that suffocating room. He gave me a pill at some point, something that made the edges of reality tilt and swim, but I never blacked out completely. I waited, watching him, listening, learning his patterns. When he finally lay down beside me, snoring softly, I started working at the zip tie on my wrist. I twisted it, bit it, ignoring the pain that cut through my fingers. Eventually it snapped. Slowly, carefully, heart hammering in my chest, I freed my foot from the belt and crept toward the door. That's when I saw the closet. Just a crack, an inch open. I don't know why I looked, curiosity or instinct. Inside were dresses. Girls' dresses. Dirty, torn, stained with blood. Too many, I didn't wait. I bolted barefoot out the room, down the hallway, past a cracked window. My feet hit gravel, hot and sharp under my soles. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I ran into the road, waving frantically at a pickup truck screeching to a halt. The man inside was in his 60s. He saw me, bloody, shaking, half-dressed, and called 911 immediately. I gave them everything I could remember. His description, the apartment number, even the name carved into my arm. By the time police swarmed the complex, Raymond Cale, 38, had barricaded himself inside. Negotiations failed. He shot himself before they could reach him. Inside his apartment, officers found 6 girls' dresses, a folder of missing person flyers, a shoebox of photographs. I was the only one who survived. When my parents arrived at the hospital, I was already stitched up. My arm would always bear his name, though years of laser treatment faded it almost completely. They cried. I didn't. Not at first. It wasn't until I got home weeks later that the weight of it hit me. I'd been failed by the adults, by the world, by the people who were supposed to notice a girl gone, a man lurking. But I survived. And now, every time I tell this story, I do it for the others who didn't get away. So someone remembers, so someone notices next time. So maybe, just maybe, another girl can be saved. I was 8 the first time I saw what I'd later understand as real evil. Not the kind in storybooks or movies with monsters in masks or glowing red eyes. Real evil is quieter, patient. It smiles at you, soft and sweet, and says things like, "I'm a friend of your mother." We lived in Pine Grove back then, a sleepy little town with one road running through it, a diner that served toast like charcoal no matter how you ordered it, and a single Walmart that people within 30 miles depended on, for groceries. Oil filters, school clothes, everything. My name's Aaron, I'm 25 now. This happened 17 years ago, the Sunday before Father's Day. That afternoon, Mom, Dana, had just finished scrubbing the floors and running the vacuum. She wore her old faded college t-shirt, the one that said, "Don't rush me." I'm waiting for the last minute. I used to trace the letters with my finger when I was little, like it was a secret code only I could read. Hey, Aaron, she called from the living room, slightly out of breath. Want to come with me to Walmart? I need some cleaner. You said you still need crayons for your Father's Day card. I perked up instantly. Can I get the big pack this time? The one with silver and gold? She gave me that tired but warm smile. If you promise not to open them in the car and melt them into the seat again, then yes. I grabbed my Velcro wallet, red with race cars plastered all over it, and followed her out the door. Back then, Walmart felt enormous. The automatic doors slid open with a whoosh, like we were stepping onto a spaceship. Inside, the air smelled of popcorn, rubber tires, and floor polish all at once. I clung to Mom's hand tighter than usual. She noticed. Hey, she said, kneeling a little so her eyes met mine. We're just grabbing your colors and a couple of things for me. You and me, okay? I nodded, a little embarrassed but reassured. We wove through aisles past rows of televisions, fishing poles, bird cages, and stacks of neon backpacks. I remember thinking Walmart had everything, like a whole world contained under one roof. That's probably why I didn't notice her right away. The woman, she didn't draw attention. No loud voice, no strange behavior. Just the same purple windbreaker, the same long brown hair, the same slow cart pushing. Always one aisle over. At first I thought it was coincidence. Lots of people needed shampoo or cereal or paper towels. But by the fifth aisle, something in my chest tightened. Mom, I whispered as we walked past bags of dog food stacked higher than me. I think that lady's following us. Mom turned quickly, but the woman was already ducking into another aisle. Mom scanned the space, then exhaled. Probably just shopping like we are. I nodded, but the unease didn't leave. And when we turned into another aisle, there she was again, closer this time. She smiled when she caught me looking. My stomach flipped. By the time we reached the school supply section, I had shaken it off enough to be excited. Crayons, markers, glitter pens, heaven. I grabbed the biggest box they had, 120 colors. Mom checked her phone. Aaron, I'm going to run to the restroom real quick. Stay right here, okay? Don't go anywhere. I promise, I said. She kissed the top of my head and walked away. I plopped down cross-legged on the shiny tile, flipping open the crayon box. Mango Tango, Razzmatazz, Macaroni and Cheese. I loved reading the names, matching them with their colors. That's when I felt it, a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned, and there she was. The woman from the aisles. Up close, she looked older than I'd thought, maybe 40. Her eyes were too wide, her smile too eager, like it was stretched on wrong. Waiting for your mom? She asked softly, her voice sugary, almost kind. I didn't speak. I just nodded, stiff and slow. She crouched beside me, her smile widening until it no longer looked like one. I'm a friend of your mother, she said. She asked me to come get you. I frowned, clutching the crayon box tighter. She told me to wait here. The woman leaned closer, brushing my cheek with fingers that felt like ice. She just forgot something and went out to the car. I'll take you to her. Something twisted hard in my chest. My voice cracked. I can wait here. Her head tilted to the side, almost bird-like. What are the crayons for? I'm making a card for my dad. For a flicker of a moment, her face shifted. Her smile slipped, her eyes narrowed. Then she forced the grin back. You must love him a lot, huh? I nodded slowly, though I didn't understand why it sounded like such a strange question. She straightened, then held her hand out to me. Come on, let's go find him together. Before I could react, her fingers clamped around my wrist. Her grip was iron. She yanked me forward fast, dragging me. My shoes squealed on the tile as I stumbled to keep up. What about my mom? I asked, louder this time, panic rising. She turned her head, eyes wide and burning, her lips stretched in something that wasn't a smile anymore. I'll be your new mom, she whispered. A better one. Trust me. My heart seemed to fall into my stomach. I looked around desperately, but no one was watching. No one was helping. I started to cry, trying to pull away. But she only dragged me harder, her nails biting into my skin. The front entrance was just ahead now, sunlight from the parking lot spilling through the glass doors. For the first time, I thought, I'll never see my mom again. Then I heard it. Aaron. The voice was sharp, frantic, familiar. I twisted around. It was Mom. She was running toward me, barefoot, stumbling, one hand pressed to her head. Her hair was matted with blood, her shirt streaked red. Tears streamed down her face. The woman froze. "Let him go," Mom screamed, her voice shattering through the store. "Let him go right now." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a basket. Shoppers turned, eyes wide. "Mom!" I screamed back. The woman bolted. She let go of me so suddenly I fell to the floor. By the time I looked up, she was gone, sprinting through a side exit before anyone could grab her. Walmart security rushed in. I ran straight into Mom's arms, sobbing so hard my chest hurt. She collapsed to the floor with me, clutching me so tightly I could barely breathe. Later, I learned what had happened. When Mom went into the restroom, the woman had followed her. She slammed Mom's head into the wall, left her crumpled and bleeding on the tile. Somehow, maybe adrenaline, maybe something deeper. Mom woke up, dizzy and half-blind, and dragged herself out. She found an employee, gasped for them to call security, then sprinted toward the school supplies aisle, praying I'd still be there. But I wasn't. She found me just in time. At the hospital, Mom needed 10 stitches. Dad and my uncle came within the hour. When security showed us the CCTV footage, Dad went pale. He recognized her. Her name was Denise Langley. She used to work with him at an auto parts plant 2 towns over. For years, she'd sent him letters, shown up where he went, convinced herself they belonged together. When he finally told her to leave him alone, she turned dangerous. She started coming to our house. That's when Dad quit his job and moved us to Pine Grove, trying to keep us safe. She must have found us again. Must have been watching us for weeks, waiting. Denise was caught 3 days later in another county, living out of her car. Police found wigs, fake IDs, notebooks full of names and addresses. She was charged with assault, attempted abduction, and stalking. Dad got a permanent restraining order. We didn't move again, but everything changed. Cameras went up around the house. Mom never went anywhere alone for months. She was careful, watchful, but never afraid, at least not in front of me. Once I asked her, "Weren't you scared?" She brushed the hair from my face and smiled softly. "I was terrified," she admitted. "But nothing could have kept me from getting to you." I still have that crayon set. The box is cracked, the crayons inside brittle and dull. I keep it in my desk drawer. I never finished the card that year. I didn't need to. Dad already knew how much I loved him, and thanks to my mom, my real mom, I was there to tell him. In the ordinary things, horror hides best. That night, it wasn't anything unusual, just exhaustion weighing me down, the kind that seeps into your bones. My name's Emily Walker. I'm 36, a single mom of 2. Asheville, North Carolina has been home my whole life. My kids, Ben 15 and Clara 10, are the axis my world spins on. Their father and I split custody. He gets them for a month, I get them the next. We've kept things civil, or at least polite, for the kids' sake. This happened in March, and since then I still double-check every lock, every night, without fail. That Friday blurred together. I dragged myself through a full shift at the medical billing office, where the air conditioning always seems set just a few degrees too cold, like it's trying to keep you awake by freezing you out. I hadn't planned on grocery shopping so late, but the fridge was nearly empty and it was my first weekend with the kids back. I always buy too much food on those weekends. Part guilt, part instinct. Ben had texted earlier telling me he was going to the movies with friends. I wasn't thrilled about leaving Clara alone, but she's at that age where most parents start letting their kids prove themselves. I made her promise to keep the doors locked and her phone nearby. She's mature for 10, more than I ever was at that age. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was around 9:10. The sky was that deep shade between blue and black, the kind that tricks your eyes. The air felt colder than it should have for March. I had 10 plastic grocery bags in the back seat, another 8 in the trunk. A full haul. The street was unnervingly quiet, as if even the wind had stopped to listen. I made 3 trips inside, then a 4th. The last armful was just bottled water and a jug of detergent. I nudged the door shut with my foot, locked it behind me and exhaled, my fingers stiff and aching from the bag's straps. My lower back throbbed, but at least I was home. I started putting everything away, half listening to Clara's favorite cartoon echoing faintly from upstairs. Once the fridge and pantry were full again, I decided to head up and say hello. The hallway light was on, and I heard the shower running in the bathroom across from her bedroom. I smiled. She's like me, loves to stretch showers out forever. I figured I'd let her have her time, so I went back down, collapsed onto the couch, and opened Netflix. I remember what was on the screen, made in my continue watching row. I'd already seen the first few episodes. It hit too close to home in ways I didn't want to admit, but I kept watching anyway. 20 minutes passed. I glanced at the time, 9:47. The shower was still running. Now, I'm not the kind of mom who hovers over every detail, but long showers, they rack up the bill. I told Clara plenty of times not to overdo it. I climbed the stairs and knocked lightly on the bathroom door. "Clara, sweetheart, don't stay in too long, okay?" No answer. Just the steady hiss of water. I knocked again, louder this time. "Hey kiddo, wrap it up. Water isn't free." Still nothing. I waited a moment longer, and something started gnawing at me. A wrongness I couldn't name. I crouched down, peering under the crack of the door. My stomach tightened, no steam. Usually the whole hallway fogged up when Clara showered, the mirror outside coated in condensation. But now nothing, and then I noticed it. A flicker of movement. A foot, pale, too pale. Not Clara's. I stumbled back. The light in the bathroom was off. A chill spread through my chest, sharp and cold. "Clara?" My voice shook, louder now, cracking at the edges. No reply. I grabbed the doorknob. Locked. Every interior door in this house has those simple push locks, the kind you can pop with a fingernail or a coin. My hands fumbled, but I forced it open in seconds. The door swung wide, and what I saw made me stop breathing. There was someone in the bathtub, lying flat and fully clothed while the shower hammered down on her. She wasn't Clara. At first I thought she'd been pulled from some grave. Thin as tissue, skin the color of old paper, clothes plastered to her like a second skin. Her face was hollowed out, eyes half-lidded and unfocused, long gray hair matted against her scalp. The scream tore out of me, broken, choking, raw, and I stumbled back, knocking the toothbrush holder so soap and foam sprayed across the sink. She pushed herself up with a slow, deliberate effort. Her joints clicked like aged floorboards. When she looked at me, there was nothing in the expression, just a vacancy, as if whatever had lived there had walked away hours or years ago. I slammed the bathroom door, then screamed Clara's name until my throat burned. I ran down the hall and shoved into her room. She was under the covers, curled so small she might have been 8 instead of 10. "Come on," I said, my voice urgent and ragged. I grabbed her arm and pulled. Her body was trembling. Her eyes were enormous and wet, like a child's caught at the wrong hour. "Mom, who's that?" she stammered, voice thin with sleep and fear. We barreled past the bathroom together. The woman thing stood in the doorway, water dripping from her clothes and leaving a dark trail on the tile. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched, as if deciding what to do next. I snatched my phone from the counter, dragging Clara behind me, and bolted for the basement guest room. I slammed the door and locked it, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I hit 911 with a thumb that felt like it belonged to someone else. My voice was a whisper. "There's a woman in my house. I don't know who she is. She's in my bathroom. My daughter's here. Please hurry." The dispatcher's calm voice was a thin rope I clutched while I wrapped Clara in a blanket. She wrapped her arms around me like she was 5 again and whispered into my shoulder, "I thought it was you. I heard someone come in. I thought it was you." My chest tightened like a fist. We listened. Footsteps creaked on the stairs, one slow measured step. I held my breath and peered through the crack of the door just in time to see her climbing. Wet footprints ghosting up the steps. I didn't know what to do, so I hid and prayed. How had she even gotten in? Thank God Ben had left the front door unlocked. Minutes later, 10, maybe 15, a hard knock sounded at the basement door and a voice announced, "Polite? Police." Relief flooded me like heat. They did what police do. They swept the house, checked every closet, looked under beds, pulled back shower curtains. They tore through the rooms with flashlights and blunt questions. There were no signs of forced entry, no torn screens, no broken locks. The woman was gone. Gone. Vanished like a page torn from a book. The front door had been unlocked. Upstairs, the tiles bore a trail of wet footprints that led from the bathroom into the hallway and stopped as if she'd simply evaporated. That was all. Dark shoe prints on the floorboards. I told the officers everything I could. Her face, the soaked clothes clinging to her, the way she sat there in that blank, empty way. Her eyes. I kept going back to her eyes. They looked like something that had watched too much and then let go of the memory of it all. Could she have been on drugs? Mentally ill? I asked, needing an explanation I could fight. One of the officers gave me an answer I still think about. There's no telling what people are anymore, he said. Drugs can do a lot, but so can grief. So can years alone. It was a bland line, but the truth of it landed like a stone. That weekend, I changed every lock on every door. Ben came home around 11 and walked in like any teenager, confused, apologetic when I showed him the wet prints the officers had missed. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, and I couldn't yell at him. I didn't have anything left. We went to my sister's for 3 nights. I slept in fits and starts. The police found nothing. No neighbors reported someone leaving. The doorbell camera had recorded nothing unusual. No fingerprints. No motive. It's been months now. Every time I hear water in the house, I feel a small, sharp panic. Every creak of the floor sends me searching for shadows. The strangest, most unsettling part is what she didn't do. She didn't take anything. She didn't hurt us. She simply stood in my bathroom, in my house, in my space, and looked like she belonged to a life I couldn't see. For reasons I still can't make sense of, that is what terrifies me the most. Not that she was dangerous, but that she had been there in my home and simply left without explanation, leaving only damp footprints and a silence that refuses to settle. It began as little things, the kind of moments you shrug away because life is noisy and busy and you don't have room for alarms. We were tired and hopeful at the same time, fumbling toward a normal that never seemed to settle. My name is Daniel Whitaker. My wife's name is Ava. We lived, in a quiet neighborhood just outside Rosewood, Indiana. Tree-lined streets, retired couples, the occasional lemonade stand. The kind of place you tell yourself nothing bad ever really happens. We adopted our son, Caleb, when he was 2. He was a quiet kid, oddly solemn for a toddler. He came from foster care after his birth mother, a woman we never learned much about, left him at a hospital and did not come back. Doctors warned us he might be delayed after early neglect, but nothing we couldn't handle. Ava and I were ecstatic. She couldn't have biological children, and adoption had been our path for years. From the beginning, we were honest with him. As he learned words, we told him he was adopted, that he was chosen, that we wanted him. He's 7 now, sweet, quick with a grin, obsessed with dinosaurs and waffles, and stubborn about sleeping with the nightlight on, though he insists he's not afraid of the dark. But this isn't exactly a story about Caleb. Not directly. It's about the house, or what came with the house, or what followed us into it. We moved into 118 Alder Lane in late March last year. It was a foreclosure. A little rough around the edges, but fundamentally sound. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, a sunroom, and a big fenced yard where Caleb could run. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We painted Caleb's room a sky blue, bought a second-hand swing set, and let him pick posters for the playroom, which used to be the guest room. At first, nothing felt wrong. Then small odd things piled up until the pile was heavy. One of Caleb's plastic dinosaurs, a green stegosaurus, kept showing up in the kitchen, even though we had him pick up before bed every night. One morning, I opened the fridge and found it sitting upright on the middle shelf next to the eggs. I called Caleb in from the living room. "Did you put George in the fridge?" I asked, trying for a laugh. Caleb ate his cereal and said plainly, "No, George did." I chuckled. "Who's George?" He didn't answer and kept chewing. Ava smiled when I told her, saying, "Imaginary friend, normal." She was right, in a way, for a kid who'd barely spoken when we got him. Pretending was good. I was relieved to see him inventing company. But imaginary friends don't slam closet doors. The first time I heard the voices, I was putting dishes away and passing Caleb's playroom. I paused because I heard 2 voices. Caleb's high, quick, and another voice lower. Not quite adult and not quite a child either. Wrong in a way my chest noticed before my head did. "No, you go first," Caleb laughed. "Fine," came the other voice, softer. "But you promised." I stood there with a damp towel in my hand, listening. I pushed the door open. Caleb sat cross-legged at his Lego table, facing the closet, not holding any toys. He was staring into the dark of the closet like someone might be standing there. "Who are you talking to?" I asked and tried to keep my voice casual. He turned slowly toward me. His eyes had that flat look, like someone waking from a dream. "No one," he said too quick. "George. George is in the closet?" I asked, moving closer, already knowing the answer would be empty. He nodded. I opened the closet. It was empty but for a smattering of jackets and the faint smell of old fabric. "Okay, buddy, bath time," I said, forcing a smile. "George can help clean up." Caleb stood, whispering like a child, repeating something solemn. "George doesn't like water." That weekend, Ava and I sat on the porch after we put Caleb to bed. The night was warm and the sky wool dark, the sort of still evening that makes small noises sound loud. I brought up the fridge dinosaur in the closet voice. "Is it me?" I asked. "Is this getting weird?" Ava looked at me and for a second I saw worry flick across her face before she smoothed it into a smile. "Kids have odd phases," she said. "My brother used to insist his stuffed shark was his lawyer. He'd argue with it. It's fine. He's talking to someone imaginary, and it's a sign he's making friends." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to file it under childhood quirks and never think about it again. For 2 nights I did. Then 3 nights later at about 9 o'clock, the closet door slammed so hard the picture frames on the hallway table rattled. Ava and I froze. We both heard it. A clean, sharp thud like something with weight had banged the wood. Caleb was in bed. The house was otherwise quiet. I moved toward the playroom and could feel the air change. Cooler and wrong, as if the room had inhaled between one heartbeat and the next. I shouldn't have been afraid, but I was. Ava reached for my hand without asking, fingers tight, nails white against my palm. We stood in the doorway and listened to the house settling like a living thing. Then, very softly, from inside the closet, something shifted. A small whisper of movement that sounded suspiciously like 2 people talking in a voice that wasn't quite human. Long after Caleb's bedtime it happened. I was walking down the hallway to switch off the hall light when the closet door slammed from the inside. Not a slow, courtesy close, but a hard, angry thunk like someone had thrown it shut. My stomach dropped. I ran the last few steps into his room. The nightlight cast everything in a faint blue haze. Caleb's bed was empty. The closet was closed. I yanked it open. He stood inside barefoot, clutching his stuffed bear to his chest, staring straight ahead like his face was a photograph someone had left in the sun too long. "What are you doing?" I asked, kneeling to meet him at eye level. He didn't look at me. He kept looking past my shoulder, voice barely a whisper. He said I had to. "Who said?" I asked, trying to keep the voice steady. "George," Caleb said, the single name dropping between us like a stone. That night I didn't sleep. I sat up with Ava and told her everything again because when you say a thing out loud it becomes real, and you want someone else to nod and help carry it. This time she didn't laugh or give one of her comforting, "kids do weird things" smiles. She had seen something that afternoon while I was at work. Caleb in the backyard holding a plastic shovel, pretending to show someone how to dig a hole. Ava told me he had stopped mid-shovel like he was listening, then laughed without looking at anyone and said, "Okay, but only if you don't get mad this time." "He's talking to someone," she said, her voice thin. "It doesn't feel like a game anymore." We joked about calling a child psychologist to get an expert opinion. Safe, grown-up action, kinda meant it, but life moved. And before we could make the call, things escalated. 2 nights later, I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to a small rhythmic sound. Click. Click, click. I shook Ava. "Do you hear that?" We both sat up, muscles taut. Click, 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 like a tiny metronome somewhere in the house. The noise came from Caleb's playroom. We crept down the hall. The baby monitor showed an empty bed. The door to the playroom hung a hair's breadth open. As I pushed it, the clicking stopped like someone had pressed pause. I opened the closet. Empty. Then, without warning, a plastic wind-up dinosaur fell from the ceiling and thudded into my shoulder. It left little claw marks along its side, gouges like something had tried to tear it open. The next day, we checked the footage from the baby monitor and the cheap cameras we'd installed for peace of mind. The clip showed Caleb standing at the center of the room at 2:11 a.m., talking to the open closet. Then the picture glitched, 3 seconds of static where the world shook and the camera stuttered. When the image returned, Caleb had vanished from frame for a breathless moment. Then he stepped out of the closet alone. No one else appears on the tape. No trick of lighting, no hiding neighbor. Just the little boy we loved acting like nothing had happened. Ava found the next sign. Our wedding portrait, the frame that hung in the hallway for years, was split clean down the middle. The glass was cracked, and the photograph itself ripped precisely between our faces. One half on the floor, the other still hanging on the nail. We hadn't touched it. No drafts, no baseballs from neighborhood kids. The tear was surgical, as if the house decided we should be divided. That's when we decided to leave. We packed a week's worth of clothes, toothbrushes, and the things that ground you, and drove across town to Ava's sister's. A week away calmed us. We felt safer, smaller things felt normal again. We went back only to prepare the house for sale. The first few days after we returned were deceptively ordinary. Caleb seemed lighter, laughing, finishing meals, doing his homework with a focus I hadn't seen in months. We told ourselves moving would fix whatever had seeped into that house. But normal isn't a switch. It's fragile. One morning, Ava opened the linen closet and found Caleb's bear, the same bear he hugged to sleep every night. Its little arms were twisted backward and the head had been partially ripped off. The stuffing was matted and dirty. When we asked Caleb what happened, he swore he hadn't touched it. He walked past us, glanced down the hallway where the air seemed colder, and said softly, "George doesn't want to leave." Our last night in the house was the worst. I sat outside Caleb's door with a kitchen knife across my lap, ridiculous and practical at once. At 3:12 a.m., the hall light flickered. The bulb stuttered, and then the door to Caleb's room creaked open by itself. I stood. He was in bed, eyes wide, tears carving clean paths down his cheeks. "What's wrong, buddy?" I whispered, stepping close enough to feel how small his shoulder blades were under the blanket. "He's mad at you," he said plainly. "He says you're taking me away." The closet began to rattle, a dry rattling like someone shaking a locked box. The sound filled the room and made the hairs on my arms prickle. I didn't think. I just grabbed Caleb and carried him out. Ava was waiting at the top of the stairs with the car keys already in her hand, pale but steady. We left everything behind. We drove and didn't look back. We sold the house within 2 months. We signed papers, stapled receipts, and moved on. We never returned. Caleb doesn't talk about George anymore. He sleeps better. He smiles the way a child should, and sometimes in a way that is both ordinary and heartbreaking. He refuses to sleep without his nightlight. But there are moments, small and precise, when the old patterns reappear. He plays quietly and glances toward the corners of rooms as if waiting to see if someone will step through the wall. Once last week, he looked up at me while eating pancakes and asked, "Do you think George found a new house?" I didn't answer. There was a lump in my throat, and I realized that not knowing felt safer than imagining the alternatives. But at night, sometimes after we've put Caleb to bed and the house is finally still, I hear something faint, a discreet little click, and I pray, hard, that it's only the house settling or a pipe or a neighbor's clock. I pray it's nothing more than my imagination.